Imagine yourself like this. You cannot see what's happening around you, and you cannot speak up against the wrongdoings around you, especially the things that you feel passionately for. India is a big country. There are more than 700 million young people who were born between mid-80s and mid-90s. They're from different cultures, different castes, different religions, different genders, different identities. But there's one thing that binds them all together. It is the fact that they grow up in a culture of silence. When young people here grow up, and in many other parts in the world, they're often boxed into categories. The society decides for them. This is the path you should choose, this is the career you should take, this is the education background you should have, this is who you should marry, and this is what you should do in your life. Very seldom do we actually tell people, you know what, take some risks, fail, break stereotypes, smash the stereotypes. We don't tell these things. And what ends up happening is severe apathy towards issues around us. Most young people are born in a world that is plagued with issues, from global warming to the HIV crisis to gender-based violence and a lot more. And suddenly, the onus of solving all of these issues is on them, without adequate information and sensitization. When I was 17, I felt that there was a big problem. I, myself, as a young person, was always told that I'm important, that many other young people like me are important, and that our voice matters. But beyond lip service, there was barely anything done to make sure that young people matter. If you look at the way policies are made in the country, take youth policy for example, there's barely a consultative process that makes sure that all of young people's diversities are taken into account. So I had to do something about it. I was really passionate and irritated by this fact. I had been a blogger since I was 14, and blogging came as a very natural response to this scenario. And that's when I started Youth Ki Awaaz in 2008 as youthkiawaz.blogspot.com. But for those of you who've run blogs, you probably know how difficult it is to get your first reader, right? So I remember, in the beginning, my mom was probably my only reader. And that too, I would force her that, I've written a new blog, why don't you go and read it? And I was in school at that time, I was 17, and I would go to my friends and say that, I've written this really important piece about global warming. It's my opinion, what I think about it, why don't you go and check it out? And they would go and check it out, and they would comment on it saying nice, with a smiley. But the reality was, it wasn't nice. It was actually pretty dark. And when I saw my peers feeling like this, I realized that, it's not about just this silence. There is also a culture of not encouraging others who are voicing themselves. There's a culture that we kind of grow up in, that we pull down others who are voicing themselves. Over the next couple of years, I decided to stick to it. I decided to keep blogging. I decided to keep sharing my views and opinions. And very soon I realized it had to be way, way bigger than I am, than my stories are, than my experiences are. And that's when I opened up the platform in 2009 for anybody to write. Over the last 8 years, more than 75,000 people have used the platform to speak up on issues that they deeply care about, from gender-based violence to menstrual taboos to so much more. And today, we get more than 3 million readers a month. We've trained more than 6,000 people on how to speak up on issues, how to actually do issue-based writing and storytelling. And I'll tell you what happens when people decide to speak up. In 2011, there was a big crisis that the world faced. It was the Middle Eastern crisis. And at that time, everybody realized the power of social media. It was particularly important for me and for Youth Ki Awaaz because one of our readers, Pranay Manocha, his dad was stuck in Libya. And the last he had heard from his father was that he doesn't know whether he'll return or not. The government operations had launched, but they were pretty delayed. And the media wasn't covering these personal stories the way they should have. So Pranay reached out to me and he said that, I'm really struggling to get my dad's story out. What do you think we can do about it? And I was right out of college. I had no contacts in the media. All I could do was tell him that, hey, do you know what? Why don't you go on Youth Ki Awaaz and write an open letter to the Ministry of External Affairs? We'll see what happens. And I kind of knew that, we have only 3,000 readers a month. Not much is going to happen. But still, let's give it a shot. So he wrote an open letter. And within a day or so, there were 500,000 people who were trying to access it because it had gone viral. Everybody was tweeting about it. Everybody was writing about it. And the media finally took note. Within a day, Pranay was all over the news. His story was all over the news, and there was tremendous pressure on the government bodies to make sure that the emergency operations happen faster. And within 3 days of that, it was all over the place. Not only was Pranay's father brought back, but 16,000 Indians were rescued from Libya because Pranay's story managed to create the right kind of pressures on the government. And that's the kind of impact that speaking up has. More recently, I'll tell you another story that we came across. The head of one of India's oldest temples said that machines should be installed to check whether women are menstruating or not, because when they are menstruating, they are impure and they shouldn't be allowed inside the temples. One of our readers from Chandigarh, she felt very passionately about this, and she said that, you know what, this is not done. This is actually the taboo we've been perpetuating for years, and it has stigmatized women for something that's absolutely biological. So she wrote an open letter on Youth Ki Awaaz about it. And within a day, support started pouring from all across the country. Men, women, young people from all over wrote in. It reached more than 1 million people within a day. And what started was a movement called Happy to Bleed. It was all over the country and has gone all over the world now. Women all across are speaking up against menstrual taboos and are making sure that we take note, and we cannot ignore this. That's what speaking up can do, not just for me, not just for you, but for others. And that's what we need to encourage. We need to make sure that young people who are going to take over the world tomorrow have adequate spaces to decide how they want their world to be, to make choices and fail, and take more risks and break taboos. Because if we don't do that, what we're making sure is that the world stays the way it is. And I'm sure you all agree it's pretty bad right now. So we do want to fix it. Speaking up can make sure citizens are rescued. It can make sure that sexist rules on campuses are changed. It can make sure that we can impact voting trends across the world. And more than that, it can ensure a better future for our future generations. So my call to action right now is that let's make sure that we encourage the act of speaking up. It shouldn't be a taboo, and we shouldn't be told that we are a problem child because we spoke up. Thank you.